Good evening, everyone. Joining us in person, hi Paul, or online. This is our November 6th workshop. It is a working session. I just would like to start out by thanking everyone who ran for office over the last year or so. I think everybody at this table and Erin joining us online knows that running for office is a very vulnerable place to be, and it's really hard work. So thank you to those who ran particularly at the local and state level. And here we go with the good work of local government. So announcements. Two, one is that yard waste is tomorrow, so put your bags out tonight. And the other we will discuss under board business. Second is an opportunity to request to vote to add or modify an agenda item. Any requests? Okay, moving on to board business. The first one an item we are not happy to cover, but we are shifting into stage 2 of our water emergency and are moving into that proclamation tonight. We are down at 59.85% of our reservoir, so 60% knocks us into the next stage. The next stage, in addition to everything that happened at the 80% stage, stage 1, identify and stop all leaks, cease washing vehicles, building exteriors or outside areas. I have seen folks posing off sidewalks. We just can't do that anymore. Refrain from watering lawns, ornamental shrubs, plants, trees, gardens at all times. Irrigate vegetables or fruits for human consumption by handheld containers only. I don't think that many people have pools still open, but refrain from filling and or maintaining levels in swimming pools, hot tubs, or similar recreational pools. Bars, bed and breakfast, coffee shops, hotels, and restaurants, including those in hotels and bed and breakfast, shall only provide drinking water upon request. That's actually always part of the code, but we're just adding it as a reminder here. And hotels, bed and breakfast, and short-term rentals shall wash linens during guest stays only upon request. So hold for the next visitor if you can. Why is this really important? Well, when we get down to 45%, we will have to begin drawing on the Catskill Aqueduct. That connection was remade in 2022. And just to give you a sense of what that means for cost, it's approximately $2,450 per million gallons. We use about $300,000 a day.
300,000 gallons.
300,000 gallons. Yeah. What did I say?
Dollars.
Gallons.
That would be expensive.
That would be expensive. 300,000 gallons per day.
Run out of water.
So it ends up being about $1,000 a day for water, which will run down our money quickly. So it's very important that everybody be conserving in every way you can possibly think of. Turn off your water while you're running your toothbrush, etc. Right now we're at 59.85%. We will not begin drawing down until 45%, but we are ready to do so if we need to. New York City has also been put on a drought watch. They're drawing on the same water we're drawing on if we go to the aqueduct. And it is especially important now because the second aqueduct that New York City draws from, the Delaware, is out of commission at the moment. So I don't think we need a motion, but we may as well do it just so we have it in the record. I'll make a motion to proclaim a stage 2 water emergency.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Shorter showers, everybody.
Shorter showers. Erin, was that an aye from you?
Aye.
No.
Yes.
Okay, just remind me to give you a signature when we're done. Okay. Next item is approval of recommendation for paving bids for Cedar Street, Benedict Avenue, and the Boulevard. So in your packet, Michelle pulled together the total that we have available for paving. There haven't been big paving projects in a few years, and we're wanting very much to do it. I'm pleased to say that working with the village attorney and with Bugsy, we were able to identify easy mill and pave locations that don't require a lot of infrastructure work underneath them, but are riddled with potholes and will be a big quality of life improvement. And those are near the the intersection of Constitution and the Boulevard, Benedict along the grocery store, between the grocery store and the wine store, and The third is back on Cedar Street, beyond the cemetery, where you, with the back entrance to Haldane. So there are two important things about this bidding process that is new to us, and we're able to do because of decisions we made prior on procurement. We've piggybacked with a Dutchess County bid on milling and a Putnam County bid on paving, so we could get that done quickly. And then we have approached Haldane. Our property line ends before the Haldane driveway begins. While we have the trucks deployed, they will pave their section and be billed for the paving. There's one price for the milling truck. We pay for the milling truck no matter how many feet they do. So that would be part of the package, and then Haldane would pave if the trustees approve working together like that.
Great.
And that also helps the approach to Half Moon Ridge in Nelsonville. So the bid amount is $98,545, and it is eligible for all of the DOT reimbursement programs. Discussion.
No, good work.
No, and this like is improvements that just have to happen.
Yeah, and I'm pleased that we can do it before the winter.
I literally helped the senior crossing that bit outside of Food Town. They were like
Yes.
pushing a cart and couldn't get it over the potholes. It was so bad.
Yeah, it's been bad for a while.
Yeah.
We had talked about doing Lund Terrace, but obviously it's hard to do that in the busy season when there's so many people. So we'll come back to that in other locations in the spring. This is what we can do for the fall. So would someone like to make?
Can I ask a quick,
Yeah, go ahead.
so, we have this information from Michelle about chips and pave and the other two that, I don't know what the stand for.
Pave. Pave our potholes, and I don't remember what EWR is.
Yeah. Oh, pave our pot, got it. So this, can you just walk us through this a little bit of how this amount relates to?
This is the
current bid?
aggregate money we
Bid.
have available from our
This
the
is how much,
federal and state money that comes through the DOT for paving programs.
Yeah.
So we have this much available waiting to be spent to fix roads.
great, like,
And earmarked for that.
great, like 450, and then this is
And this,
about 100,000.
yeah, 98,545.
And does it make a difference where we're, like, which one Michelle is pulling from? Or
Will is
do they
gonna
have
work,
to- do they
Will's
have
gonna work with
deadlines?
Michelle. No, this
Okay.
is, we get it from the state every year.
So
And it's been sitting and accruing.
And they're without, it accrues without a,
Yeah, it's an
without
annual
the
allotment.
deadline.
And
Okay.
it's accrued and hasn't been used. And so
Yeah.
we're trying to use it
Yeah.
and actually get things fixed. Great.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Do these funds, can they be used on state roads? Like if ever we wanted to, not for now, but if ever we wanted to do 9D or something like that?
We don't do
We don't
anything.
have
That's
control
only
over
New York
that.
State. No.
Okay,
The
got
state
it.
These are
actually
only
does
our
their
roads.
own chips.
They have their own
allocation.
budget for that.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know.
And then they also have a capital project list too. So they have their regular paving budgets, which is how it gets all patchworked with up the sides, just the lines, et cetera.
Yeah.
But to get the overall work that was done, like out toward Anthony's Nose last year, that was a capital project.
Got it.
And they do those in 5-year cycles.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Someone like to make a motion?
I will make a motion to approve, the recommendation for paving bids for Cedar Street, Benedict Avenue, and the Boulevard in the amount of $98,545.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you.
Erin, are you and I?
Aye.
Thank you. Next is, I'm gonna turn over to Laura for the NYSERDA stuff.
this is a contract for, our $175,000 grant, from the NYSERDA Clean Energy Communities. We talked about this a bunch of times, but this is the actual, contract. We have agreed as a board to use this grant toward energy efficiency improvements here in Village Hall. And we've approved these contracts before. It's boilerplate, from the ones that we had before. One thing that is nice is you'll see the expiration date is in 2028. So, we have a while, if needed, in order to spend on the funds.
Which is great because
It's not an easy project.
this project is very complicated.
Yeah.
And at some point soon, we'll have an update on that. We had roofers on site recently, in pursuit of the DASNY grant, and bringing together the DASNY grant and the NYSERDA grant for improvements in Village Hall. And they've made some structural recommendations about the roof, and we need to do some core sampling on the roof, to look for any hazardous, it's old roofs, standard, but that's the next thing that needs to happen. The tree in the back, that is not on village property, but overhangs this building and the building next door, is being, removed by the property owner. Thank you very much to Tara and Pogo. And then the tree that's on my side, along the sidewalk back to this house is coming down too. So then we're ready to go with roof repairs. So there's always a million things that need to line up before you roll, but we're getting there, bit at a time.
And actually, I would, oh, go ahead.
So just a question, so this funding plus the DASNY funding will cover things like, what's the list of things that we're
It
planning
covers
for
the
building for the public?
boiler we approved last week,
You're talking about Daphne.
DASNY, yep, the conditions assessment
Mhm.
that we've had from the architect, the engineering, plumbing, electrical assessment and recommendation report that we've got. The installation of new doors. Part of it's covering part of the security upgrades. Some of that came from a DOJ grant. And the NYSERDA piece will cover,
It's like the building envelope insulation. It could also cover lighting upgrades, that kind of thing. That is all energy efficiency. It has to be items that were identified in the energy report that we got a while ago. And $175,000 sounds like a lot, but I understand it goes quickly. If we happen to have extra after doing that, then we could use it toward other eligible items. We'd have to amend the contract.
and DASNY is 250. And we're in the process, Greg and I are working on updating the spreadsheet based on all of the work we spent, I think, in 26 so far on the architecture and studies. I have to update the spreadsheet and send it around, but there's not gonna be a lot left after, but it's all the things that we needed to do
You have
to
to
be
know
able to
what
do the
you're
next thing.
doing,
Yeah, I
right.
mean, there weren't even plans for the building, so
Okay, thanks.
give you an update when I have that done. So would you like to?
Can I just say one other
Yeah,
thing?
go ahead.
One of the challenges that we've had among them is finding a qualified professional who is for energy efficiency improvements, both for the design of it and likely also for the installation. And one of the things that's hard is that the industry right now seems to be divided into like big commercial buildings and residential buildings, and we are in between. And so it puts us in a tough place. So if any, I'm kind of putting the ask out to the community. If anyone has ideas about companies or experts, let me know. I've talked with a number of architects here in Nelsonville and gotten advice, but no clear lead right now.
Basically, the person who would say, all right, this is your energy load right now. This is what you're striving for. This is the insulation and the R rating, et cetera. These are the steps you need to take to get to what you want to install, because it's a different airflow with a different heating system, et cetera.
Got it.
That's a long answer.
No, it's very helpful, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so we
Right,
don't think
now
we have a
I'll make
motion
the-
yet. NYSERDA.
I make a motion to approve the NYSERDA contract number 240084.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Erin.
Yeah, let's have it.
The next one is a longer listen to our voices thing. So when the Butterfield development was designed and reviewed 2012, 2015, the traffic studies at the time did not indicate the need for a light or other pedestrian intervention at the crosswalk between Chestnut Ridge and what is now New York Presbyterian medical offices and the senior center and apartments. Since, well, around 2017, a group of residents in Chestnut Ridge began advocating for some sort of intervention. It stalled for a period of time, and now the movement is active again, mostly because we have now tighter cooperation between Sheriff's Department, Traffic Safety Committee, and the village. The Traffic Safety Committee has made a recommendation to DOT to ask for a study and some determination of what intervention is appropriate at that location. Among the discussions was a pedestrian activated flashing light. Installing a traffic light there has to be obviously part of a bigger consideration of traffic flow, I-90, et cetera. But something to buy people more time and hopefully slow people down as they come around the corner. So kind of an intermediate step to a larger discussion of pedestrian safety on 90. So we have a resolution. Eliza made some recommended edits. I incorporated them here. Is there any other discussion?
I haven't seen the final resolution until just now, because I've seen the red line.
Oh, I sent it with the red line. This is the same text.
Same
Jeff just
text?
put it on the,
Okay.
sorry, Jeff, I'm still calling you Jeff. Greg just put it on letterhead and formatted it as a resolution. So it's the same text that was sent this afternoon.
Okay, so I did review that. Thank you for clarifying. So there's a reference to the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council
Mhm.
draft.
Because we don't have it in final form yet.
Right, I haven't seen that. So I would love to review that before making requests to DOT
So
personally.
that report, just so you know, I did send it around, but that report does not reference the only intersection on 9D that study made any reference to is the 90 and 301 intersection. Remember, they chose 5 with us. They chose 5 locations to look at. The 5 locations were Lunn and Market.
Mhm.
Paul, you're gonna love when you see the recommendations. I made at Lunn and Market. The bottom of Main Street around the Visitor Center,
Mhm.
Fair Street, 90 and 301, that intersection
Mhm.
specifically, and the trolley.
Okay.
And that was working with the county on the trolley as well. So that is the only intersection discussed. And what it recommends for that section is I've pulled text out of the language. There's no rush. We can table this if you want to table it.
I would
Um,
like to table it just so I have a chance to digest that.
How do others feel about that? It's fine with me.
I agree. I'm glad you sent the Nimtex draft around today, but it's 43 pages, so I think it's worthwhile for us to digest it a
I
little.
apologize for that. I thought I had sent it when it first came in. So I apologize you're getting it so late. It's no problem to delay this.
Is there any, is there a timeline on the DOT side that we need to know about?
No,
that This
no,
needs to get out?
No, just the Traffic Safety Board is asking for a resolution from the municipality, and the DOT requires a resolution from the municipality before they would then even consider modification.
Because, okay, so I'm fine with tabling if we could add it to say next week's
Sure.
agenda. If not, we could always take out that. I don't think that paragraph is necessary.
I actually think it's helpful, and it was Eliza who pointed to that, to including it. I think it's helpful because of the language that they use in that paragraph about 90 as a state highway. Route 90, New York 90 may present additional challenges due to the high traffic volumes, higher speeds of cut through traffic, and the presence of large trucks. And it cited the crucial role that speed management, visibility, and signal timing will play in traffic safety at intersections. Although it only looked at the one, so it's fine. Go ahead.
I have not, since we just got it, I too have not read the NIMTIC study, but I'm curious to know what do you think is in there that would potentially change
I
this
couldn't guess. I mean, I have a
Mhm.
couple questions about like what we're asking of them. One is, are we asking them to fund the improvements to the crosswalk, or is it something that we're asking for a permit for?
Not us, we're
Well,
asking
mine,
DOT.
yeah,
Because
because
DOT
it's state,
Right.
it's.
Right,
that's the road.
but the DOT can give us a permit to do the work.
They can,
Or
and they may
they
turn around and
can.
say, we're not willing to do this, you need to seek a permit to do it yourselves. This is just it's an initial ask.
Right.
So
I'm
we're not
just-
asking for money or not, we are giving a supporting recommendation, having already been requested by the Traffic Safety
To, like,
Committee to start the conversation.
Got it.
Exactly.
Okay. That's good to know. because I think that if we find funding ourselves, it'll go a lot faster than if they
I don't
do.
know, they've had a lot of requests on this intersection. I don't know what the timeline will be. But it could be short, it could be long, I don't know.
Okay.
And I think to your other point, when you made edits today, couching it in this is one intersection of a stretch that needs attention, right? Just like the letter we wrote last year when we wrote a letter to the Traffic Safety Committee, right? We included those concepts that the whole system of 9D needs to be looked at for pedestrian safety. And this one is a particular concern.
Yeah, I mean, I reached out to the DOT just to ask like what the process is, so I understood the resolution a little bit better.
And what did you find that was different than what I've been instructed?
I wouldn't say it's different than what you've been instructed at all. I would say, that, like, they provided me with data on accidents in the corridor, and they're like, well, there aren't any accidents over there,
Yes.
actually, no pedestrians have been hit.
That's why we are where we are, because since 2017, the DOT has been saying after resident requests, sheriff requests, parking, traffic safety committee requests, they keep coming back with, we don't have any accidents there, there's no data. So
my question is there data that we can provide? Like, for instance, like our police department does speeding tickets in that corridor. Like, if there's a lot of evidence of like many people speeding well over 30 miles an hour there, like that's enough to like scare any senior from crossing. So like if we have things like that we can bundle and provide them with, maybe.
Sure.
And
If you
letters.
would like to take that up and put
Wouldn't
that
that
data
just be
together?
like supporting?
It is supporting
to the
the
Supporting
resolution?
evidence, yeah, absolutely, but I would love to like provide more of that, so
Right,
that,
so that, will you take that on?
absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome. So I'll make a motion to table this until next week. Awesome.
Well,
All in favor?
I,
Hi.
Thank you, Barbara, for taking that on.
sure.
And just to close out the NIMTIC coverage, we have a call tomorrow at 3. You all have the draft. It's not going to be tomorrow isn't the only opportunity to comment, but now that we've all had it, we'll get it on an agenda to discuss. And I think
What's
Barbara
the
Burrows is
call
on that call tomorrow. I told you about that today in the email. It is the NIMTIC folks that we met with, who did our community member on the call. There were 3 people from NIMTIC, 3 people from Rutgers, Barbara Barossa, the planning commissioner, and me, and I invited you to come if you would like to come.
You sent that email sometime between 5 o'clock and this meeting, and it's a
Not
43-page
Excuse me,
report.
Eliza, I'm not sure what you're trying to accomplish here tonight. You asked me this morning, had I sent it? I realized I hadn't. I sent it. It was earlier in the day. It was not after 5 o'clock. This was sent earlier in the day as
It's
well.
fine. I'm not gonna be able to come to a call after not having that short of a time to review something, so it's fine.
I realize that, and I have apologized, but you may not represent that I didn't send it until after 5 o'clock, because it is simply not the truth. It was earlier in the day. The window is tight. I will report out on the meeting. If you would like to have another trustee to attend, to attest to what happens in the meeting, you're welcome someone else is welcome to join. I'm not making any agreements without you. It's just a follow-up on the draft. It's not our only opportunity on the draft. It was my error not forwarding it to you sooner, and I apologize, but it's not the end of our opportunity to talk with NIMTIC.
Great.
Okay, thank you. We all do our best, Eliza. I missed forwarding an email. It is not an effort to keep you in the dark. The next is approval of application for street opening and sewer connection repair, 199 Main Street. Matt has already given the go-ahead on this. It does comply with codes.
This is a repair to a sanitary line.
Yes,
so
repair. It's not a new connection.
It was more of an emergency than what we did last week.
Questions, discussion? Okay, so I will make a motion to approve the sewer lateral repair, 199 Main Street. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aaron?
Hi.
All right, sounds like you like that one.
Okay. So now we'll shift into, well, if you don't mind, so that we get the business items out, you mind if we move up minutes and bills and then shift into discussion? Anybody have an objection to that?
No.
No. Any, comments on the minutes? Anyone? Okay, would someone like to make a motion? There's someone waiting to come in.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of 10/30/24.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Thanks. And who has the bills?
Okay, I make a motion to approve the bills batch 619, sorry, in the amount of 47,511.88.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Uh-huh.
I keep saying aye, but I don't think you can hear me while you're talking, so
Yeah, exactly.
you get the timing right.
Okay, so this is now. Last week, where we left off with short-term rentals, our conversation was kind of all over the place. So in an effort to not be all over the place this afternoon, Jen Zwark is with us. She sort of went section by section and came up with an itemized list per section. That was it. I talked to her at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Okay, just so that we have something to work from tonight. We all do the work we can when we can. This is meant to guide us in our conversations going forward because our conversation felt chaotic last week. So working from her section by section list, I went in and color coded to identify what portions are being drafted. Green for where we need to have discussion and make determinations. And then in orange is what we're waiting for the attorney's response. So I know this was just sent around, so I know you haven't absorbed it all. The conversations that are in green are the things that we have begun discussing and haven't closed out on. So we can do this a couple of ways. We can go through item by item and just identify where we are out loud on each item, or we can focus in on the discussion, whatever folks feel more comfortable with.
Sorry, so we can go item by
We
item
can,
through
if
the
you'd like, we
green?
can go through, no, we can go through the whole document if you would like, just to review where we are with each item, which is probably helpful for everybody. It was helpful for me to get it organized that way. And then make as many decision points as we can tonight. Because with the decision points that we need to make, Jen is able to bring it all together in a full draft with what the staff is working on in terms of permitting and enforcement. Then we can come back and review that full draft together and decide, make modifications we need to make and decide when it's ready for public hearing. So discussion points tonight, determinations that we can make, redraft, reread, come back together again. So I'm just gonna go through it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think it's helpful that you sent that around to structure the conversation. I mean, I would like to just sort of, if okay with everybody, just make just a comment from where I stand right now before we start the conversation and invite other people to do the same.
Sure.
Okay, thanks. So this is just my second time being able to participate in a discussion of the short-term rental. I know all of you have been participating many more times than you care to remember, probably over many years. So I raised something last week that continues to worry me that hopefully is a lens we can look through this discussion with for everybody and helpful. You know, it's the fact that we've had a law on the books for several years, and there are two people who have permits right now who have, and that, our goals really aren't going to end by the village clerk estimate. There might be 200 short-term.
Actually, the clerk Jen and the clerk discussed that estimate, and he can give you, he was inaccurate in his assessment.
That would be great to have a more accurate.
Talk about that when we get to that portion.
Okay, well, there were more than two. I
Yep.
assume, right?
More than
So, um, so, our system is only going to work and our goals are only going to be met if there are more people going through the permitting system. So every time that we make a restriction that makes it harder or excludes people from the permitting system, we are encouraging tacitly unenforcement, right? And just non-compliance. Unless we assume that people just won't do short-term rentals, but our current behavior shows that's probably not the case, right? They're going to do it anyway. We can try and chase them with enforcement, but I don't think we really, that has to be only a part of it. So, so one thing that keeps bothering me is whenever we're making things harder now for people to have short-term rentals, it's an impediment to the goals that we have. And I think we're anticipating certain problems. This is what I observed last week and from watching the previous meetings. We're anticipating certain problems that we don't necessarily have. Whereas instead, we can try and make a more permissive process where if we have problems, then in a future year, perhaps we can tighten that up because there's a reapplication process. So just that's what I just wanted to explain how I'm looking at this, right? That, at the moment, I'm really worried that although some things, I've started doing a comparison of the current law versus our proposals, and I have a table. I've just right before the meeting.
Jen already has built a table of the existing law, the recommendations of the ad hoc committee, and then this document. So you probably have overlapped each other some.
That's great. I'm sure we're going to need this to explain the changes to the public in the future. I would love to see that as well, so I don't have to do the
Did you
work that
send
I've
that
been
today?
doing.
I'm just asking Jen, just confirming you sent that, right?
Yeah, it's also, Aaron, it's in the SharePoint. It's in that presentation that was made by the ad hoc committee last year, whenever that was. It's part of that whole PDF. So there's two of them. If you scroll to the very end, there's a 3. And I have
Okay.
one more, I have an updated one that I've kept too. So I agree with you. It's very confusing and it's good to have that comparison. So.
Yeah, if somebody can point me to the document, I've never gotten an orientation on what was shared before my term started, so I'm not sure too much where to look. I mean, I've have a folder, but I've also been told we're not using parts of that, so I'm a little.
It's all in the shared drive. It's all there. You're right. And Greg did reorganize that folder to help you get through that.
Okay. So I will look there. That's good that that exists. Okay. So that was the main point that I wanted to make, to try and look at it through the lens of let's lean towards more permissive right now, because any sort of restriction or enforcement we have are not working at all because nobody's applying. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the goal that let's see if anyone thinks differently. I think that's the goal we've had all along, is to make it easier to comply. It was the law that is on the books now. It's impossible to apply. It's impossible to enforce, right? With the lottery system, et cetera. That's the entire purpose for doing what we're doing. So I think we're all on the same page about that. Am I right?
Can I add, a real purpose of the law in general is also to maintain livability in the village, to maintain housing for residents. So I think our goal is to create a regulated business here for, through short-term rentals, or to regulate a business that's operating already. But we have to really balance that importantly with these other community and social goals that we have, for sure. And I think that a main reason why you see operations that aren't permitted is because of the difficulty of enforcement. And so we're creating an application process that is hopefully more reasonable to apply to, but we're also creating an enforcement process that our staff can use. So I expect that people who choose not to go through the permit process will get a fine. They will be in violation, and they will be held accountable for that in a way that should increase the adherence to it in a way that is not happening now. So I hear you, but I think that we're we're trying to balance all those things and, we have to keep all of those pieces in mind.
Good?
Mhm.
Okay. So let's just go through. Let's go through section by section. Section, okay, so 100.1, the purpose, Jen is reordering, and Erin, just so that you know, there's the document on the SharePoint, that's the draft, where everyone has been commenting and exchanging ideas back and forth. Jen has gone through that document and distilled the comments into a clean document that's easier to read, right? Rather than looking at one comment line after another. So she is building out the next draft based on feedback and decisions that we make. So you'll be able to see both the red line with everyone's comments and the clean version. And this document that I sent earlier and that we're looking at tonight kind of distills all of what has been, all of the feedback that's come either through the document or in our previous two discussions and from the village attorney, and brings it into one place. Does that make sense?
More or less. I understand the document you sent earlier, which is the order you want to go through things, and that's perfectly legitimate. It's a helpful organizing tool. So, yes.
Okay. Just so that when you go back to the OneDrive, you know what you're looking at. All right, so 100-1 is the purpose. Jen is reordering it based on feedback. So this blue are being drafted items. Definitions, it was clear last week, we need clarity around accessory structure, accessory dwelling, accessory unit, and a gathering, an event needs to be defined. 100-3 rental classifications, caps and fees. There was feedback that the language for rental terms allowed with a one-term hosted unit should be made clearer. We need to set fee structure for permits. The clerk and the accountant are going to be putting together a proposal for us to review and compare with what we've got in the draft to make sure we're incorporating all the costs of the revenue, just like we did for films, just like we're doing for parking. 100-4, short-term rental requirements and permits. There's a few items through here. We need to add language relating to the occupancy tax law. We didn't have that cross-reference. We didn't have that in place when we were discussing the first time. 100-4C. Assign.
That's actually, it's Kathleen, that's a typo. It should read G, not C, just so you know.
Oh, I wondered the.
Sorry, that was probably my typo. I don't know.
That's okay. All right. So C is okay then. The next is, so the first item under 4 for discussion is 100-4D. Address issue of simultaneous use of permits. One time be hosted. I don't remember who asked this question last week, but there seemed to be a lack of clarity on whether someone could end up holding both at the same time. Is that right? Whose question was that?
It was actually, it was Aaron's question, but I think a few other people weighed in. There was some confusion about it.
So do we have resolution on that? I've left my draft on my desk. I'll be right back. You want to keep going through while I get my draft?
Sure. Well, I guess my question, was it Aaron's question? Or we don't know whose question it was?
It was.
Question are we talking about?
So
The-
this is relating to the idea that the confusion about one-time short-term rental permits. You can hold a one-term short-term rental permit simultaneously with holding a hosted permit. I'm sorry, maybe this wasn't Aaron's question. So sorry, Aaron, if I misattributed it. But the question was there was some confusion about, could that allow for some kind of workaround, or can you get both? Aaron's comment was, can you get both a hosted and one-time hosted at the same time? Related to this section D or item D. Does this ring anyone's bells?
No.
I don't remember this at all.
So can I just explain it? The law itself, the difference between a one-time short-term rental permit and a hosted short-term rental permit is the one-time short-term rental permit doesn't require you to have a host on site. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And and all people in the village, all properties, sorry, should they meet the other requirements of the short-term rental, would be eligible to apply for one of these permits that's limited to 14 days to one 14-day. They could pull it for one 14-day term, or if they wanted 2 consecutive days, like 7 days and then 7 days squished together, to rent, like during West Point graduation or something like that. So it was meant to be like a way to allow that activity that a lot of people engage in just once a year. But the main difference between the permits and why someone would pull both at the same time is if you had a hosted permit and that you pulled or you were awarded, that requires the host to be on site during the term of the rental. It gives you lots of freedom to rent 365 days out of the year, but that's the requirement for it. Whereas the other permit, that requirement is just that you designate an agent that can respond in your absence. So it's essentially a very, very one-time only unhosted allowed. Does that make sense? So that's why someone would pull both. They might want to go away for West Point graduation.
So it's just a policy question for us, whether we want to allow that to be the case. That the one site could have both permits.
Yes, basically.
Are there any complications that we would be concerned about allowing? Basically, it's somebody applying for 2 different permits.
Like, and how would we know that they weren't using that multiple times?
Don't they
Well, they have to register their one.
But if they already have the other permit, they can have.
But they would have to register their one-time use for the I'm going away. And so you could imagine like maybe for enforcement, it would be a little bit trickier to notice which one's which, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the first, like the bigger permit of the hosted, and then, so you could do that whenever. And then you get the one time.
So
You'd
we-
have both going simultaneously. I think that would be
Yeah.
really problematic. Then we would never be able to really figure that.
Tweeps, maybe your question comes down to how do we know that a hosted permit host is
Being hosted.
on premise? That's the real question there, right? It doesn't really have anything to do with a one time,
No,
whether the host is there or goes away, right?
that's correct. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, good question, but it's
How do we control that anyway?
Yeah,
Right.
I
Yeah.
agree. I mean, if we have an enforcement scheme that is workable, then there shouldn't be an issue with this, with the 2 on one site. Unless we think that that's too much burden on neighbors of having, that's like extra impact or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. My brain says like, that does not make sense to be able to have both.
Because you can do, if you're unhosted, I mean, if you're hosted, you have 365
Yeah.
days anyway. We don't have any limit on days, so they do overlap.
And I appreciate if you wanna go away, but then you can't, I mean. Then you shouldn't like be doing your business during that time. I don't know, I just don't feel like that's.
but,
The goal
but
is to
we
be hosted.
Yeah.
we are letting other people who don't have a hosted permit do
Yeah,
their
just
business
one
that
time,
way,
one time,
one time thing.
right, just one time. And
Okay.
that you would know you're gone July whatever to July whatever, you're coming back. You have these people saying. That's your business, and then you're back in your house. Fine.
Are there legal ramifications, I guess I would ask, of excluding? Because it is 2 different permits. So if there's not like a clear legal reasoning.
The
Just
legal
saying.
reasoning I don't mean to interrupt. It's hard on Zoom. I'm sorry.
It's okay, it's all right.
I think the legal reasoning might be the hosted permits are much more restrictive than the one time. We only have 40 of them. We have unlimited one-time permits. And so we're giving you a special franchise here that you don't have otherwise. And so therefore we can enforce other restrictions on that. I'm not a lawyer, but that seems to me what a lawyer might say. Um, However, so maybe that answers or helps shed some light on that. My point of view again is, I understand an argument in terms of fairness, but through the lens that I started with at the beginning of this discussion, we're putting additional restrictions on something that we don't know is a problem or not. And so it's going to be, you know, a discouragement from people for doing things. And I don't know if there's harm in what we're doing. Besides, it feels unfair and not to be reductive to what you're saying, Tweeps. But, I understand that part of your point of view. But I also think, this is just added layers of bureaucracy for something that might not need a
But
have
let's remember how we got to this place, which was the two types. That was feedback from the public and from the ad hoc advisory committee to make accommodation for people who like to do periodic, right? There's a number of people in the village who make a large chunk of their mortgage payments through the year in a big West Point weekend, right? They're not short-term rental hosts all the time, but they go away during graduation week and rent their house for several $1,000s. And we were asked to be sensitive to the need to accommodate that kind of short-term rental, which was unhosted and limited. So that's how we got here.
Mhm.
And I think that there's still relevance in that. I don't see the logic in saying someone can have both, because we are already, if you're a short-term rental operator, you have an unlimited number of days already. So the purpose is different for each thing. And I think my view is we're sort of overthinking this piece. Village attorney has reviewed this once, more than once. He's reviewed it many times and he's worked with us. He didn't raise the concern that you're raising.
that that I'm raising.
I'm sorry,
I
that
raised, yeah.
Eliza's raising, sorry.
I just want to make sure that we're covered. I don't really have a strong feeling one way or the other.
And so your question again on coverage is
like, if there are two different permits, can we tell people that you can only have one and not the other? And is there any legal reason why we shouldn't do that? That's all I'm asking.
can you exclude?
Right. Can you exclude based on the availability of the other permit to you?
The way it was written originally. Oh. Sorry, maybe it didn't, I'm looking at the language of the track changes.
There's a lot of changes.
I mean, the original idea of like each tax parcel only gets one permit
Yes,
is a pretty clean way to say you just get one. And like, I would think from a legal perspective, like, we're not saying you can't have one, we're just saying you have to pick one rather than you're excluded from one.
that's the logic of the conversation.
I think
that I
that's,
recall.
yeah, I don't feel super strongly on this one.
But we can drop this one into the confirm with attorney pile.
Yeah, and just to be clear, my point of view is in the interest of trying to get more people to apply for these 40 permits, so we can keep an eye on them and more easily, get occupancy tax and more easily enforce the rules that are really well natured in the permit. Having you be able to rent out your house all the weeks that you are in there, and also being rent out your house the 2 weeks that you go on vacation is a nice benefit. And I don't own an SCR, I don't expect to, but I think, I'm looking for ways to incentivize people to use the permits.
Okay.
So I would be in favor of allowing, as the draft is written now, both permits by a single holder.
I would be in favor of that too, just because I don't really see it as a problem, but
Others?
but I don't have strong feelings.
I would not be in favor of that. Absolutely not.
I don't I don't have a strong concern about it. I would be okay allowing for both.
I think enforcement of that is just, then why have, like, why have any of it? Because we're not gonna be, we have to be realistic about what we can enforce and keep track of, and that just seems like a pathway to, it may not be a problem now, but there could be somebody who decides, sure, they'll go the legal route and they'll get the permit, and then they have the option of doing the one time, and now their house is being rented out half the year, and they're not there. Because we can only do so much to,
That question though would be the same if it was the hosted, like if they,
true,
if
but at
they
least,
break
but
the
I
rules, they
think
break
it's
the
cleaner
rules.
the way, as Laura pointed out, like the language is clear, you choose your business model. That's it. I mean, my interest is not to like, my interest is the health and safety of the people who are staying in your home, right? And, keeping our community a neighborhood and not, homes being rented out willy-nilly all the
We're
time.
all interested in that.
Right, so then I think that we should put in guardrails to ensure that that happens. And this to me would be, allowing for other opportunities for people to do things that are not legal, and maybe it's happening now. That's true, but that's why we're working on this to mitigate for those issues.
It might be helpful at some point in this to hear more details on what and maybe it's staff are thinking in terms of what the enforcement process will look like. And to know kind of, yeah, a little bit more about the details of it and the burden of it, and like whether we need to keep things super bare bones. Or whether it, I think it's just hard. We're kind of imagining what that enforcement is like.
Well, we're in the process of
Yeah.
drafting, so as we do work, it's gonna inform other sections. Some of this too is knowing what's available to us
Like
via
grant
technology,
and-
yeah, so I've asked Abigail, similar to what you and Catherine did, but now some time has passed, to, identify with these goals, what are our options with these different programs? And so we'll have to come back and make a budgetary decision about that. But that will inform, I think that will help us inform, knowing what our options are and the modules that are available will help. I think we're in a different place than we were, for lots of reasons, we're in a different place, but the mentality that you get the tools in place that you need to do the job right from the beginning. The staff is on board with that at this time. And that makes sense to sort of set it up right from the beginning, and using the technology to make it as simple for them as we can is a good thing. And they're there.
That to me gets a little scary, because back to Erin's point, if our code is still not to the public's agreement or whatever, if you only get 5 applicants and we're paying $10,000 for Granicus, then we're not gonna cover the costs. So that to me is a little bit like budget wise.
Well, but we also
Scary.
have to balance out with, and Greg, you can speak to this now, or if you want to speak to it as you go on. He and Abigail at this point are trying to build out a permit system. What would it look like if we were to build it ourselves versus use a system that is a package that's made to do this? Do you have insights that you'd like to offer?
What happens when I leave in 2 years? And with it goes all of my knowledge about how to vet an application. Wouldn't you want an application or something standing there that's going to be stalwart for the life of the village and not relying on any one person or one individual?
Wouldn't I? Yes, for sure.
So then why wouldn't we go with a software package that can be the basis for that?
I mean,
So-
we have already the software package through the parking program that would let you have application for permits as well. So there's different options, but Granicus is just really expensive.
That's why Abigail is comparing to see what, because there are also now more players in the field.
Great, that's great.
So the costs may come down.
Yeah, we'll see what she comes up with.
And I think we should, sort of reinforcing Erin's point, we should start from the position that we're gonna get to a code through this drafting process that people will be able to comply with, and they will comply with,
I hope.
and that we're able to enforce. That's the whole reason we're going through this. So I think starting from the assumption that people aren't going to do it, like, then let's just pack it up now.
Right, well, that's going back to where we were in this conversation is like, you know, Tweeps is concerned that people will just start cheating because we gave them 2 permits. Like, to Erin's point, like, why would they cheat when we just made it easy for them and we gave them 2 permits? And they've got the option to do exactly what they want, so without breaking the law. So why would we not give them that option so that they could follow the rules and also pay for the permits?
I think, can I weigh in here a little bit?
Yeah,
If you
please.
don't mind, to Eliza's point. I just wanted to reiterate that the ad hoc committee, which I feel always obligated to represent,
Yes,
did
please.
a problem with the simultaneous ownership of 2 permits. But the loophole problem that Tweeps is pointing out is a problem. It's like, if you think through the process, it's definitely a problem. It creates a loophole. However, a loophole for people to run a 365-day operation, but that's not actually hosted, where people are away, for example. But the enforcement of this particular issue, i.e. having a host on premises or having an agent responding within 20 minutes or whatever, is just enforced by a complaint system. There's no way to enforce. You can't like go into someone's home and say, "Oh, are you there? You're the host." We won't be able to do that as a village. So in reality, the complaint would trigger enforcement. A complaint being you live next to someone who seems all the time to be away. They're your neighbor, you know them. They seem always to be away when they have short-term rental. So you're suspicious about it, or it's creating a problem for you for some reason because the guests are loud, or I don't know, whatever. Just imagine that. So you can't talk to your neighbor because he's not there, then that would trigger a complaint, and the complaint would trigger that investigation. So in either case, it would just be the complaint would trigger it. And if the person couldn't, the operator couldn't show you a one-time short-term rental permit that's dated and they are away, they can't respond within 20 minutes, then they would be in violation. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'm sort of trying to address, I think Tweeps' concern is like very valid. It does create a loophole, but the way that, so it would be stronger to not have that loophole. But the complaint system that I'm taught is the way that either one of these permits is going to be enforced. And that seemed to mitigate the concerns of the ad hoc committee a long time ago at that time. So that's all I want to say.
But just to be clear, you said that they did not have a concern about having the 2 available at the same time?
No, I mean, as it was kind of confusing last meeting, but the majority of people on the ad hoc committee were short-term rental operators. I was in the minority, and one other person that I'm not a short-term rental operator. They weren't all operators within the village, but they were all very concerned. I want to make this very clear with making this system much easier for short-term rental operators. They didn't share a lot of the concerns that other people in the village who are not short-term rental operators, which is the majority of the village, a vast majority, have. So I don't know if, does that answer your question, Kathleen? They did not have that concern, and we came to a consensus that this didn't seem to be a concern for all of us. We were united in that. So both operators and non-operators on this point, because the complaint system seemed like it would work in either case.
Off your audio, please, in the audience. Whoever's got audio going. Oh, it's outside?
I think they're outside, yeah.
Is that outside?
Yeah, there's a deck back there. We now have residential neighbors over there.
Yeah, oh, that's.
Yeah, they must have audio out there. Okay, so, sorry, back to this, that was distracting. So you didn't have a recommendation not to allow it, is the point?
No, in fact, we're recommending that you allow it.
Okay.
That's not my personal opinion. That's the opinion of the ad hoc committee. That's why it's in this draft.
Thank you,
Do
Jen.
we feel like we've beaten this particular horse to death?
Yeah, do we wanna make a vote on that, or
Well, that's the way it is in the draft now, so there's
Okay.
nothing to change,
so people can apply for both?
right?
Okay.
Under 4D, let's just make sure that we're right. Each property tax ID within the village is allowed one hosted and one-time short-term rental period per permit term. So we're registering that that is not something Tweeps is in favor of, but
I
everyone
am.
else feels okay with. Length of permit term is the next outstanding item. I raised this thinking further on what Laura had talked about last week and the research that you did about repetition of inspection. You know, Jen had been put forward last week to consider one-time inspection at issuance of permit and then not again. I think Laura and I both felt like it would be good to have periodic check-ins, in the same way that hotels and B&Bs have annual inspections by the health department to establish some degree of repeat. And so one way I thought about it was, right now we issue the permits for 2 years. And the re-inspection is on reissuance of the permit. What if you were to extend the permit length so that the time between inspections was 3 years, as you saw in some of the examples that you looked at?
That would probably then affect the cost
Yes.
of the permit.
Yeah, it would.
So it'd be a much bigger upfront chunk.
But you would be buying the convenience of
Not
having to do it again for
Sure.
3 years.
And it reduces the processing burden on
staff.
Yeah,
This is, I think it was Hudson, or the town that Hudson is in, town of Greenport. Their renewal is every 3 years.
Aaron, were you saying something?
Yeah, just a point about that. So part of what my thinking is, make it easier, but also, that does open us up to the desire that we want to change this and improve things in the future. Not that we want to redo this law every year, but the idea is, let's say if we do find we have too many people and problems and complaints, which is not the issue now, but it swings the other way. Are we able to, like, let's say we've given out 43-year permits, can they be held to new laws as we change it? Or are they is that sort of a contract to wherever it was frozen in time, whatever the laws were? So let's say we change the noise limits, or we want to reduce the number of permits. Can we kick people out of the program, or, or do we have to, do we have to, keep our
Would
promises?
people be grandfathered if the law were to change? Is that what you're asking?
That's right, because if it goes to 3 years, then we're tying ourselves to these decisions for 3 years, as opposed to being able to make changes in a shorter term if we want.
Go ahead, Laura.
Which is, I think what Erin is saying is if you have a shorter permit.
Yeah.
Length, then you can make changes. I think it's hard to give rights. And then quickly take them away, and so I think we should I get it that we won't know everything, but I think it would be pretty tough to set out a program and give someone a permit and then 2 years later say, oh, never mind, we're gonna cut the permit in half, and then the investments that you made into your business, we're gonna take it away. So I don't think we should really try to not do not do that. Yeah, I think we should do our best to create a workable system.
Also, if I can piggyback on that, I mean, I think the point of the inspections is like, again, health and safety. We're
Yes.
checking for things that are like kind of not really negotiable. Like you have to have a certain entry, exit, windows, fire, like
tying
that's
it
part
to
of that's the inspection
But
part.
tying it to the permit process brings up Aaron's question.
Sure, but I think that those things kind of like, to me, are like the basics of the permit, the things that potentially we're not going to change whether you need a fire extinguisher or not. We may tweak something in the permit process of, I don't know, it's a green sticker or something, like, I feel like it's not gonna be things that are so, required in order for this to work, period. The things that we change in future date might be other things that are a little bit more
Well, the longer
flexible
period,
things.
the
Can
longer
I,
period.
wait, Kathleen, can I
Yes.
just point out
Go
for your
ahead, Jen.
discussion?
Yep, go ahead.
Kathleen, the, section 104A addresses this point, and it was really important, I think, in the beginning. I don't know if it adequately addresses it, but it addresses it. It says, Village of Cold Spring short-term rental permits required by this article are regulated privileges, not rights, and
That's
can
right.
be revoked or suspended by the village in accordance with the provisions provided in this chapter. That was like a legal, we had to put that in there. We were advised by everybody legally because these are not rights that someone has. These are privileges the village is deciding to extend, and it can be edited, I think, at any time, depending on the village's changing circumstances. Now, legally, I don't know what that means in terms of people being able to sue, but I just want to point that out, that is in that section there.
That's
Okay.
very helpful. Thank
I'm
you.
sorry to interrupt you, Kathleen.
No, that's fine. It's, and remember, you're coming with the longer experience and memory working with the committee. So I appreciate you hopping in and don't hesitate. I was trying to get at the making it easier question, which was giving you more time before you need to deal with inspection again, need to deal with applying for a permit again, right? It's fewer touches and therefore fewer interruptions in your course of business, the business you are choosing to operate within a residential zone, right? If people feel like extending it another year is not a good idea, that's fine. We're just throwing it out there.
So I like the idea of making it more of a 3-year thing than like an annual thing for sure. I still lean towards, I prefer having to get your inspection once when you first get your permit and then renewing without having to go through that and checking like, yes, I have all my fire.
Oh, the affirmation.
Yeah, affirmation, because if you, for instance, like the egress, ingress things, if you change your building, you have to go through the building inspector anyway. So those big things
Mhm.
aren't gonna change outside of the village's knowledge, right? And if they do change, they have to go through fire inspection at that point, right? So the only things that a fire inspector would be coming back for is make sure you have your, fire alarms and your, like
Fire hydrant.
fire hydrant, whatever those
Or-
core things that everyone's house has.
Mhm.
And so I feel like that's a great burden for a very small thing that like just needs a checkbox.
Well, I mean, yes, I agree. However,
And cost.
some of the items that Laura looked at, I think are worth considering. In the other municipalities she looked at, there are some that are just fire code inspections. There's some that are fire and building code inspection. So yes, it's fire extinguisher and egress sprinklers if they need to happen, right? And that's driven by the state uniform fire code. And then there is the look for the things that one of you just described, which is light, ceiling height, like the baseline requirements. So you could envision the possibility that someone might put in a basement apartment that passes the first inspection, and then they make modifications and chunk it up so there's another bedroom,
There's a flood.
what?
Where there's a flood.
Potentially, right? Now, hopefully that person, if a person were in a situation like that, they would secure building permits to redo the work and have an inspection. So we're going to continue with my example because if you chunk it up into another bedroom, right? So you have another room to rent and up your cost, and the room doesn't comply with square footage requirements for a habitable bedroom, right? That's a building code issue, not a fire code issue.
So maybe that.
So Laura looked at a number of codes, and some of them are just fire code inspections, some of them are fire and building code inspections. That was another thing I hope that we could talk about, is what she found in her research.
So if your building isn't up to code today, like,
Mhm.
you know, my house isn't up to code today. This is not true, but I'm just saying as an example. And I applied for a permit. Are we, is it in there? Are we suggesting that we add a building inspection and a
It's not in
fire
there. That's
inspection?
what I'm raising based
That's
on the
what I'm like.
research that Laura did in the last week, is saying right now, it simply says inspection.
Mhm.
What I noted in her research is that those municipalities specified fire versus building. And I think there's value in both of them, and I'm putting the question out to you all. There's the timing of the inspection, but there's also what we're looking at in the what we're telling the inspector to look at.
Right.
It seems wise to me to do fire and building, others may feel differently.
No, I think that makes sense, but I think, Eliza, you brought up something that we might have lost in the conversations since,
I hope you remember.
yeah, which is, the concept of having some sort of document that you could get signed by,
An affidavit.
yes, saying, you know, these things have been checked and you check.
But you guys are talking about two different things.
Yeah.
Are
Just to
we?
say, you're talking about one by like a licensed engineer, by a third party.
Yes.
And you're talking about a self affidavit. And so just to say.
Oh.
For renewals. So,
Two
so
Okay,
I,
sorry.
yeah,
Yeah, then you're
I-
right.
Two
Then
different
I,
options.
I
fair
think
enough,
that
okay.
making sure the building is up to code is a good idea in that initial inspection. Like if it's a 4-foot crawl space they're trying to rent out and the building inspector comes in and goes like, it's got the fire hydrants, we're good. Like, that's no good. So I think having certain standards for like bedroom that the building inspector would review with the fire safety inspection seems like a good idea. I would only support that level of inspection once for the first one, unless there's like a break for years and they have to reapply, but letting renewals continue with a different form where it's like, yes, I still have all of my fire safety items and submit that with the renewal form.
And you can sign it just as the property owner?
Yeah,
Without any,
I mean, unless there's somebody who's more appropriate, that doesn't cost $200.
Like a code enforcement officer?
Well, I mean, that's labor that we have to pay for, or, well, the person, the applicant would pay for it, but still, it's costly and we have a shortage of labor. No offense.
That's,
I thought, I thought it was pretty striking that this was a Google search and I just kind of clicked on whatever came up. And I found, I don't know what it was, maybe 10 or more. Every single one of them had periodic inspections without exception. And that, I mean, I haven't done the like kind of conceptual research on short-term rentals. And so, you know, Jen, I'm sure would have more of that or others, but like that seems to suggest that that is a core part of regulating these. And I thought it was also interesting, so this is Canada, but in Niagara on the Lake, they actually changed to Aaron's point of kind of learning through process, they changed their requirement to during their 4-year permit process, they then required a mid-year at the 2-year mark inspection because they found so many fire code violations. So, you know, I think that there's probably a difference of hosted versus unhosted in these. I didn't dig into that, but I feel strongly that there has to be periodic inspections, and I think it should be on a 2 or a 3-year cadence. And I think that I think it's reasonable to have this option of a third party kind of engineer report, so that it reduces some of the burden here. Maybe it's cheaper, but I don't think it can be, I think it has to be a third party
I worry about that.
instead of
Because,
code enforcement.
yeah, because I worry that we're taking someone else's word that a building meets code,
But we do that for to be fair,
Oh,
we do that for electrical.
but it's another municipal entity doing the inspection.
No.
It's the county.
I don't think so.
Electrician.
I think it's,
But
no, it's not the
yeah.
electric, I think it's a,
County does electric inspection.
yeah, but is it a county
The
staff
county may
person? I think they
contract out,
contract out.
But
They might, but that's having a,
it's still
being
the
in
town's
a
still liable.
municipality in contract with an inspector is different than go pick
Yeah.
an inspector and let us know what he finds or she finds.
Don't they have to be, aren't there like certifications? Like
Yeah.
somebody who's certified as this job?
But then we have to make sure that we are
Yeah.
doing, we get that information and now we have to do the due diligence to make sure that that's not like your brother-in-law who lives in your
Has a
basement
stamp.
in your
Do they
posted
keep the- do they
SDR.
keep their certification up to date?
Well, I
Right.
mean,
Are they somebody that got it one time and then let it lapse and now they're just doing them on the side?
but I think we have, like, I think there's plenty of things that where we're requiring expert, like certified. I just think, you know, I agree, someone could be acting outside of their, you know, they haven't re-upped their certificate or whatever, but I think like if it's their business, they have to do things. Maintain their license to operate and to continue to be hired and, not be reported to the state, so but we could, like, I did see in one of these examples, that was one of the options that we could use, so, here, Poughkeepsie. So we could ask Poughkeepsie, for instance.
And John first had given us advice on this, the inspections and the Fourth Amendment issue, because the
Yeah.
reason we were even considering letting someone not
Yeah.
on building enforcement
Yeah.
do inspections was because of Fourth Amendment rights, where people might not want village employees in their house.
No, that was about providing business data. I don't think that was related to the, I don't think that was related.
No, can the village legally require inspections by the village code enforcement or fire safety officer as a requirement to get an FTR permit? That was the question.
Okay, and the answer
And the
was,
answer was some type of safety inspection should be conducted before the permit is issued. I would give the applicant the option of having the village inspect or having the applicant find a New York State licensed PE
Okay.
to
I'd
inspect.
forgotten that, okay.
So that I think is a reasonable option, just so that we're not getting in trouble legally. Really what we're debating is how
As
often.
how often?
Yeah, and.
Okay, thank you for, reminding us of that.
Yeah.
Can I ask, and apologies again if this had been discussed, I don't remember it being discussed, but can I ask Jen, because I imagine you all had the same discussions. How often, right? Changing, because it's 1 year currently and
Hang on, Erin, I think,
Sorry.
is she there?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, sorry, keep going. We thought we lost Jen.
oh, I'm glad we haven't. From 1 year to 2 years, but I imagine the committee also discussed like what the length of the permit is, right?
To be honest with you, I don't remember. I have to look back at my notes if we discussed the length of the permit, but I'm sure that we did, and we arrived at this recommendation of 2 years renewal. The first part of the question was, can you ask me again? Aaron, sorry.
That was really just the
Oh.
entire question. Did you discuss it and what was the thinking? But
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel obligated to mention that the inspection discussions, as I recall them, and I can look back at my notes, were characterized as a concern or an impediment, I don't know what you want to call it, for people participating in the permit system. It seemed to be the biggest concern and the biggest impediment in some ways, because it was not just expensive, but also created time. And I think probably people did not like having other, inspectors in their house or whatever. It's a privacy issue. So that was an issue, but it was balanced by this issue that you guys are talking about and that Laura is bringing up about safety and the village's obligation, which is one of the goals of this law to, protect public safety.
So do we have, let's break it into two pieces and talk about inspection and length of permit. So we have in front of us, let's see, we've got options for the village to inspect or use a certified third party. So it's the who. The when is how frequently. And the third question, I think, is whether or not you tie it to permit renewal, right? So on the first piece, do we all feel comfortable with the recommendation that John made for village or certified third party?
On renewal.
On the inspection, first on inspections,
Whatever
whatever inspections you do.
however many we require.
Okay,
I'm fine with that.
I'd be more comfortable with the village on the first one.
Yeah,
And,
that's-
and renewals could be out to certified.
yes, that was my understanding of that distinction, that would be an option on the renewal, not on the first.
Oh, okay, I didn't get
My
that.
understanding, that,
Thoughts from Aaron or Laura?
I'm good with the alternative. I will just take a quick look about the what this was here. And yeah, so our attorney did not say it's only for renewal. It was addressing any inspections. It seems pretty clear to me from what he wrote. So
Yeah, he may not have. That is my preference, that the first one would be a village inspection. And then renewals could be another.
I appreciate it. I would prefer to go with the attorney's recommendation of having the option of finding New York State license.
Let's clarify on that point of first inspection versus successive, okay?
I just, yeah, because I have to say, I find it a strange, we require inspections for other businesses to operate and, to get a C of A and like, in all of these other examples, basically all of them, it's requiring it from the fire inspector and the building department. So it does, John's recommendation does seem a little bit
It's because
like
it's in
surprising
house.
to me. No, I know, but all of the other ones are in-house and like the building inspector is required to do building inspections before you get a permit, before you get a C of A for.
C of O for your, whatever it is.
For other businesses, so I think it's worth following up.
So-
But I'm supportive of the idea of, village at initial issuance and, the either option for the renewal.
Okay, so we're gonna ask for clarification. 3 of us feel more comfortable with the initial inspection coming from the village and then offering the option for any successive inspections to go to a certified third party. Right? And 2 of us are fine with the third party at any point.
Well, not just fine, just I would prefer it in the interest of, again, opening this up and making it easier to have permits, especially with Jen's statement that this was the most concerning part from the owners, from the STR owners. And, I would like to address that here. Certainly increasing the permit length is a big help, for sure, but still that initial application, that's where we saw a lot of the friction now, that we only have 2 permits, is maybe a big part of that comes from inspections, and I'd like to give an option, that the attorney also seems to support, of having an alternative.
Let's make sure that the question that we're asking right now is the same question he was asking there. So we'll get clarification on that. And I take your point, Erin, about ease.
Can I throw a
so
little
now-
in here?
Go ahead, Jen.
Kathleen?
Hop in. Go ahead.
You guys need to consider whether the same questions for the one-time permit, which was a very thorny issue. Which right now in the draft of the law is a 1-year term, that you renew your one-time short-term rental permit each year. What are the inspection requirements for that? Do they match? Are they all the same? I'm sorry. I'm going to mute myself now.
Don't be sorry. This is why we work with the committee.
Well, I hate this question because all of us feel like, oh, well, come on, people are just doing it for 1 week, like, come blah, blah. But for real, like, if you requiring it of one category of permits, I don't know what kind of argument you could make that you wouldn't require it of the other, but you guys can discuss that. It's definitely an impediment for people participating in that one, so balancing the public safety thing with the second kind of permit is what I'd put.
So just to make sure I understand what you just said, that you see the alternate for a third party to be of value for the one-time permit?
Me personally or the committee? I don't know. I mean, the reason.
I'm just trying to summarize what you just said, and what I thought you just
Great.
said was you could see an offset for the one time by allowing the one-time folks to be able to straight up use an alternative inspector rather than code
Right.
enforcement.
But then why aren't you just let everybody? If it's safe enough for them, why isn't it safe enough for both kinds of permits? I would just submit that
Fair
question.
point. That's a fair point.
I will, I don't really come down on one side or the other of this issue, except to say that the reason it's raised is because I think John will tell you in that sort of summary of case law in New York that he circulated to you all and before the October 16th meeting. That summary of case law recommended this option, allowing one thing to consider would be allowing a professional engineer to submit a letter, because there have been successful cases, Fourth Amendment cases that have gone through in New York State. So
That's what you were referring to.
Okay,
Got it.
and I don't think it's established. That's probably what John is saying. I don't think it's established case law. There just has been one or so. It's not like everyone, they're figuring it out as they go. So it's not clear. And like Laura says, there's almost all, like tons of short-term rental laws require this. It's a very common requirement, because it just sort of is like common sense to have a safety inspection. But it has started to be challenged. So that's why you guys are considering this little addition of maybe that case law summary suggested this was an alternative you could to get around the Fourth Amendment challenges. That's all.
to avoid them.
Got it. Okay, got it. Now I'm following. All right, so village, given what we've just discussed, how are we feeling about putting that forward? Village and alternative for all inspection.
I'm okay with that.
Anyone else?
I think I would like clarification from John.
Okay.
But my instinct is village on the first and alternative on the.
Okay, so we'll get clarity on it. The next, that's the who. The what is fire, well, what? Fire code, building code. And it's, sounded like we were leaning toward fire and building. Am I misunderstanding?
At least for the hosted, maybe just fire for the unhosted. I don't know. I mean, I'd like to hear what the other trustees think about that, but I think it's a good idea to do the building and the fire. If you're gonna do an inspection, might as well just hit them all.
I agree.
I'm looking at an example, this is from Greenport, of like the checklist for fire inspection. And it also addresses emergency exits, as well as maintenance of building areas. Like, is the gas grill 10 feet away from something that's combustible? And then it has property maintenance about signs of rodents and address properly affixed. So it is interesting that like, it's not just about the like fire extinguishers, it's a little bit more comprehensive. So we could think about if there's potentially even a hybrid that's covering the safety, the health and safety and aspects.
Great, we can build that
So-
list.
Is that something that you would be willing to take on as a research?
I can try.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be interesting to also know, so I saw that Nelsonville has a short-term rental process and that our same building inspector is apparently
Yeah.
doing so we could, maybe,
Yeah.
one other thing I'll do is
Well,
find out
what he
what
recommended,
he
what he
is
recommended
inspecting for now.
a commercial fire inspection. So I have not seen the checklist that he takes with him, but we can ask what it is that is on his commercial fire inspection list.
I agree. I support that research. I'd like to have a conversation about specifics, not generalities when it comes to inspections.
Well, in some level, it may not be up to us. It may be what state code requires.
That would be
So
great. That would be
Scott.
very helpful. Yep, that would be great.
But maybe what we want to do is take what's required and then add in
Right.
some other pieces
We,
that we.
we
think
can
are-
be
are
more restrictive than the state, but not
Yeah.
less so.
Good.
Okay, and now are we to now we're to frequency on inspection. And the question of whether to tie it to permit renewal, I guess, is the B part of that. So Eliza, you were advocating, I think, for an initial inspection and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a 2-year permit and the whole board thinks that we need more frequent inspections, which it sounds like the majority does, at maybe every other renewal, like 4 years. 4 years, so it's like if you get a 2-year permit, you can renew it once and then you have to
Who's
get a
gonna
new
track it?
inspection.
I guess would be the, like,
The
remember, we have to
clerk
remember
or
we have to remember that staff. I don't know how you,
Well, you would have a list of people who have permits and how many times they renewed.
Last inspection date. That's,
I'm
You have to
not,
have a
it sounds like a
systematic
simple
check.
question, but we're not sitting in the desk taking care of these and all of the other permits we're dealing with. So I would like to hear from Greg what his thought is on
Right.
that level of
because I-
complication.
Because it's the it's the short-term rental permits, it's the parking permits, it's the building permits, it's the permit to do a parade. Right, so like, it sounds easy, oh yeah, it's only 40 of them, but like, it's 40 accompanied with like all the other things. So again, who's going to, and to your question, Mayor, I have no idea.
I think the simpler the better.
Right, just the frequency with which you're talking about doing these things and track, right, like, that's a process now for someone to track it. We've all already got full-time jobs, so who's going to do that?
I don't know how you track it now, so.
We don't track it now,
We don't track it.
right? There's
It's a
two
new
people with
process.
permits, so you're talking
Right,
about,
but like
implementing a
our
new
parking
process.
permits, you have like a log sheet, right?
no,
You don't?
no, so parking permits today are kept in an Excel sheet,
Okay,
right?
That's a
And-
log sheet.
So, and it's incomplete is what I was gonna say, like, it's been scatteredly maintained, right?
It's
And
being
so
improved.
it's being improved, but again, we're talking about repeatable processes, things that aren't reliant upon one person. Cause I can come in and fix the log sheet now, but in 2 years, I'm gonna be on a beach in Tahiti. So who's gonna fix your log sheet moving forward?
I think we should be asking where
Right.
Greg is going in 2 years.
I'm gonna be on a beach in Tahiti, right? Or wherever I'm going to be. I'm right. I'm gonna get hit by a bus. So having systems in place, a foundation in your process is what you need, right? And that was where the Granicus thing came from. The Granicus idea came from first. I'll tell you that our permitting software for parking would not work for this process because there's pre-vetting that needs to be done on an application, which you cannot receive inside of the parking permit process. But as far as who's going to keep track and who's going to update, I have no idea. Right.
You don't have the
envision it.
system yet.
And
so,
we envision it sitting in Abigail's desk, but we need to sort the specifics, yeah.
I just want to ask for clarification here. If, if the clerk said we all have full-time jobs, is the clerk saying we need to hire additional labor to help administer the system?
This could turn into a full-time job, Aaron. We have no idea how much, right? Like, this is a new process that we're implementing. So I have no idea how much time it's going to take on the back end to continually administer it.
Hey, but remember that part of the vision, this has always been part of the vision for Abigail's position, that this would roll into Abigail's position. We made her position full-time so that she could be the person who does her building permits and board work and short-term rentals. So it's a matter of managing it in time. Are we in a place of hiring another person right now? No, absolutely not. We have to work with what we have. But this is not, it's not a newly created anticipation for the slot that Abigail sits in, if that makes sense. We've been anticipating that since we created her full-time position.
I understand that, but I also understand that that position does today require some overtime in some weeks. So, and just want to hear from the clerk, who's, her manager, what he sees. And I think what I heard is this is going to be possibly a big burden. I just would like to know a little bit better, like, how do we understand when constructing this law, what is the burden we're creating on the village staff? because there will be expenses. Nobody wants to make a system that's gonna, be too hard to enforce. That's not going to accomplish what we want, right?
That's why Abigail, I mean, we don't have all the answers today. We're working through this as we're drafting. That's why we're asking her to research based on the work that Eliza and Catherine did initially, look at what is now available in the marketplace and how much of this can be automated so that it is the least burden possible. I think it's fair to say that doing nothing about short-term rentals is not an option. We can't not do something, right? We need to regulate in some way, and we need to make sure that we're dealing with public safety, and that we are, as a village, taking advantage of or optimizing the revenue streams that we can optimize from visitation, just like we're doing from hotels and beds and breakfasts. So Greg, did you have stuff other that you wanted to add to that, to expand?
No, I just think that until we have a clear understanding of what the volume looks like, right, like because there's multiple touch points for this process, right? There's the initial intake, review, appeal, implementation, enforcement. I mean, those things to go along running parallel with somebody else's already full-time job sounds like a lot. But I don't, if it's once every 3 weeks, it's probably not a lot. But if it's, 3 times a day, could be a lot.
Well, I think we imagine it to be a cyclical, right? To be a cyclical, just like parking permits are cyclical, right? We get to an annual process. That's what I think we're heading toward.
But appeals,
Sure.
right? Appeals are gonna be ad hoc and within that time could come up anytime during that time frame. The reapplication process upon renewal, right? Like that, I'm thinking about the entire life cycle of each individual thing that you guys are
Absolutely.
talking about.
Absolutely.
I mean, it could be that well, I don't know, like something like, permits for STRs are available January 1st through 31st of the year. And if you come in February 1st, you're dumb out of luck. And then you get that.
Somebody's SOL for 3 years.
Well, no, if you do it annually,
You do it annually, okay.
to get a permit, so that at least then, well, see, but
New
that messes
permits.
new permits,
New
yeah.
permits, it's the same way with how we're doing, I mean, it's a shorter timeline, but with parking right now, you can get a parking permit in January, or you can get it in March, or you can get it in August, right? And you prorate.
Right.
With
for a
a
year.
3-year, if, let's say we were doing 3 year or 2 year, you're gonna have people on different schedules because they applied in different years,
Right.
but everybody is gonna be re-upping whenever the permit expires. So there will always be expirations and renewals every year, but they may not be on the same timeline.
Yes, that's right.
I would say on the 2 versus,
I was just gonna note time and say it's 8:40.
We're on the same page, I mean, literally on the same page, we have not gone past this.
can I say on the,
Wasn't intended to get all through tonight.
on the 2 versus 3 years, can we, for multiple reasons, come back to it?
Yeah,
Because I think
sure.
it's gonna be informed by the cost of the permit and the management process, and like, there's gonna be a few different pieces that will inform our decision on the permit length. And we don't wanna decide tonight. I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it would be helpful because there are big items. There are big items that are missing from our discussion that need to be developed. Like Abigail's research, like what we want to compile from code enforcement, et cetera. It would be, I think we've gotten to a place where we have some big items to follow up on, and it'd be a good idea, I think, to pause and schedule this out a few weeks to give us some time. Like come back to it in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. How are we feeling about that? You seem like you're hesitating.
Yeah, no, that seems good to, I mean, the more information we have and the more definitive we have, the lot shorter, hopefully, these conversations will be. I think a lot of times we end up spinning our wheels because of all of the what ifs that we have no.
Well, right,
idea on.
and at some point, we can't know all the ifs. We do our best to know,
have
to know all of them,
right.
but at some point, just like with parking, at some point, it's a leap of faith.
Right, well, that's
Um,
where Erin's point that like, you know, if we get through a year of it and realize there are a couple things that need to be adjusted, like, it might happen.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think to Laura's point, we want to build it to be
For
as
sure.
robust as we can.
As good as we can do it.
So our follow-up for next time are,
Kathleen, can I add something? Sorry, before you
yeah, go
do
ahead.
that? Sorry,
Okay.
you guys have actually gotten through almost all the green, so
Yeah.
you just skipped around. So all the green items have been taken into account except for the discussion of multifamily zoning and check-in times. So I just wanted to tell you that you did do a lot today. So there you go. Those two items are still standing for discussion, and some have been pinned for next time, but you did discuss them. And I took
Lots of notes. I would just want to clarify that there actually was a question on multifamily. Right now, we need to match up the residential zones. Is somebody, okay, so there is an outstanding question on.
Well, I think at this point it doesn't allow it, and I didn't see a reason. I was okay with it.
Was it not being
With
allowed?
with it being allowed.
The
And
logic,
so I didn't know, so yeah, it might be good to discuss the logic of why it would be excluded.
the initial logic was preserving rental housing,
But it's
like
hosted.
long-term rental housing.
But it's hosted. So it's just somebody in you live there.
So I have
it's
a
your
2-bedroom
rental.
apartment
Okay.
and I'm renting out my spare bedroom.
Yeah.
As an STR host.
So-
But it's
Right.
only one unit in the building.
No, I know, but,
But if there's
I
two
think this
units,
is gonna be a bigger discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we don't wanna have this
So-
tonight, just add it.
I wasn't trying to have it tonight, I
Yeah.
was just clarifying,
Yeah.
was there an outstanding question? And yes, there is.
Yeah.
So if you can articulate in an email the question, the specifics of the question you want to address, because it's nuanced. Well, it's not that nuanced,
I will write it in a
but
question.
to Erin's point, right, right now, the permits travel in the text, they travel by parcel. So we would need to modify to say that it travels with unit within a multifamily building. There'd have to be additional text, and I don't want us to lose sight of, preserving rental housing.
All agreed.
All right, the only other thing was you had a question about check-in time, which you asked, were the hours too restrictive?
No.
Hours?
Right now, it's currently not allowed from after 10 PM or before 7 AM.
I didn't have that question.
Oh, look in the notes, what it looked like in the notes. So are we okay on that one, the 10 PM to 7 AM?
I think you might have wanted a
If
shorter
anything, I
window.
wanted.
Or you wanted it
windows.
shorter? I
Yeah.
understood it to be the reverse.
Yeah, no. You can pretty much
Midnight.
guarantee, no.
Nobody's awake in this town after 9 PM anyway.
That is true.
Sidewalks
Right
are
now.
literally rolled up, so you can't walk on them.
Which is
Almost
why
my
we would
bedtime.
know.
All right, so we're good with 10 to 7?
With rolling bags.
We're good with 10 to 7 then?
10 PM, 7. But,
Currently,
yeah, that's
not
fine.
after 10 PM, not earlier than 7. All right, Jen, so that one can get checked off the list from discussion.
Yay.
Woohoo.
Erin, you cool with that?
well, you sound,
What? Well,
which was the 10?
You have to arrive sometime between 7 AM and 10 PM. You're not allowed coming
I
10 PM or before 7 AM.
I really don't know why we're setting limits there.
I can tell you why, because there was a lot of public feedback in the development of the first code, and a lot of discussion by the ad hoc committee of neighborhood disruption, and not having people banging doors and coming in loud and, carrying all their luggage up and down the steps
Or knocking on
in a
the
residential
door.
neighborhood. It's not a business. I mean, it's not a hotel. being operated as a hotel, but it's still a residential neighborhood.
Okay.
Are we still on board with that?
I am.
Sweeps?
I would make it less,
Should
so
make it
yeah,
less.
you're,
I'm fine with
Not
these
more.
hours.
Okay, great. All right, so we will table this for, let's see where we are. Next week is monthly meeting,
The 20th, and then it's Thanksgiving.
and then it's Thanksgiving. I'm not coming in that one. So do you want to say December 4th? That gives us a chunk of time. Well, today's the 6th, right? So we
When's
could,
our
we could aim to come back on the 20th and for discussion, yeah. I was thinking today's the 13th,
the 20th of what?
November. To continue discussion.
When's the
Cause we're
reorg
not gonna
meeting?
do,
Reorg meeting is December 11th. Reorg and monthly meeting are December 11th.
That's
Okay,
okay with me. Then we can make more. Chipping away at it.
does anyone, wish to entertain public comment? I am okay with holding until we have further work, but
There's a couple people online and there's one here. I can't imagine they're gonna give us a earful, but
Comment on what?
on agenda items.
on agenda, I'll make a
Fine.
motion to allow comments on agenda items.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone wish to speak?
Raise your hand if you're in the online.
Okay. Seeing none.
I'd scroll
right?
through and make
Have we
sure.
got
that
everybody that-
Oh, that's everybody.
That's everybody.
Okay.
Seeing none, and make a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good luck out there.
Nice.
Thanks for your map, Kathleen, to progress us through. That was helpful.